Chapter 311, the number one genius of the first grade. There are a lot of other rankings as well, such as for blacksmiths, mecha designers, makers, and mechanics. Then there's the genius youths ranking. It's considered a secondary ranking outside of the continental rankings. Anyone on it is destined to make it onto the continental rankings, assuming they don't meet with an unfortunate accident. Only those 18 and under can have their names listed there, with their talent, strength, secondary profession, and soul power all assessed. There are 30 spots on this list altogether. Of these 30 slots, the majority are held by students of Shrek Academy, and of those Shrek students, 7 are under 15 years old. In our class, there's the rank 17 Shackle Douluo Gixing, the rank 19 Immortal Shu Yicheng, and the rank 30 Jade Snake Zeng Yuren. Tang Wuling felt his heart tremble from hearing of this ranking system for the first time. Big brother Yang, you must be part of that 7, right? Probably ranked even higher than Zeng Yuren too. You're so strong. Yang Nyangsha chuckled. I just made it onto the list, ranked 27. Everyone calls me Dark Bear. Dark Bear. Tang Wuling snickered in his heart. The nickname suits him. He's cunning and can hide it so well. Actually, the rankings aren't absolute. The difference in strength between us isn't that great. For example, take Shu Yizheng. He has a higher cultivation than the 3-ringed Luo Gixing, but he ranks lower. So you see, the ranking is a comprehensive evaluation of talent. Luo Gixing isn't the highest ranked person in our class either. There's a person under 16 who's made it to rank 9. Rank 9? Tang Wuling gaped. He controls the space element, but he isn't at the top of the list. Yang Nyangsha nodded, solemn in his action. It said that there hasn't been a class of new students as powerful as ours in 100 years. To have 2 or 3 students on the genius youths ranking and a batch of new students is already considered excellent. But the current Shrek Academy, it has 7 on the list. To be fair, 2 of them are already in the 2nd grade, so technically we have 5 in our class. The highest ranked person is called Wusijuo. I'm not sure how we compare in strength, but I know she's from Douluo City. She has 4 soul rings, but unlike Shu Yicheng, all of them are 1,000-year. She's praised as a once-in-a-century genius in Douluo City, and it's likely she'll reach the top of the genius youths ranking by the time she turns 18. And besides that, she's also a 4th ranked mecha designer. Truly amazing. Actually, she's similar to you in that regard. You've also reached the 4th rank, right? It's surprising that you've managed to do that with only 2 soul rings. The way in which Gu Yue watched Tang Wuling shifted at that moment. Originally, she had disapproved of teaming up with Yang Nyangsha, not to mention his decision to lay low. However, she was beginning to see the wisdom in his actions. At the very least, they gained a thorough understanding of the genius youths ranking from Yang Nyangsha and knew who the 5 strongest students in their class were. Does that Wusijuo have a nickname too? Tang Wuling asked. Nicknames spoke volumes about the person. Her nickname is Hell Wusijuo. She's supposedly a beauty, but to earn that kind of nickname in addition to her looks, I have no idea how powerful she could be. Hell Wusijuo, Shackle Luo Gixing, Immortal Shu Yicheng, Dark Bear Yang Nyangsha, and Jade Snake Zeng Yuren who already got eliminated. These are the 5 strongest people in our class, and they're all in the genius youths ranking. Tang Wuling turned his focus to Gu Yue. He was convinced if Gu Yue revealed her full might, she would make it far on that prestigious list. As if psychic, Gu Yue met his gaze, a flash of pride and yearning for battle in her eyes. It caught him by surprise. This really is Shrek Academy. Everyone is so much more talented than me. I'll have to work even harder if I want to make it on that list. He liked this sort of pressure. Of course, he wanted to pick up the class president's mantle, but he'd be lying to say it was necessary to him. No, his true aim in this competition was to gain a sense of how powerful his classmates were. Learning about the 5 rankers was enough for today. Now he could focus on the competition. Yang Nyangsha waited until there were no signs of Luo Gixing's group before leading Tang Wuling and Gu Yue in the opposite direction. The competition had gone on for about half an hour. All of a sudden, Shen Yi's voice shook the very skies. 48 students remain. The combat zone shall be reduced by 50%. Space warped in the next moment, the forest twisting and transforming into somewhere entirely new. The terrain changes at the half-hour mark. Luckily, Tang Wuling had subconsciously grabbed Gu Yue when that had happened. After everything settled, Tang Wuling caught sight of a group of people before him. Yang Nyangsha was still at his front, but now, about 30 meters further off in the distance, stood Luo Gixing's group. In addition, a girl stood off to the left and 2 boys to the right. A mass of people were thrown into this clearing in the blink of an eye. Luo Gixing reacted first. Tidy up the battlefield. The vanguard, a youth with a shield, immediately charged at his nearest opponent. The 2 boys on the side. The entire team of 7 moved in sync with him, rapidly closing in on the duo. Do we run? Tang Wuling asked. Yang Nyangsha waved his hand. No. This is a good opportunity. As he spoke, he approached the girl on the left. Tang Wuling took note of this tall girl. She had wavy, auburn hair, pale skin, and large eyes. Her beauty was contrasted by her cold attitude that seemed to warn all to stay away. She didn't withdraw from them. Instead, she walked forward to greet them while releasing her martial soul. Let's team up against the Luo Gixing's group. Yang Nyangsha shouted when they were 20 meters apart. Surprise was evident on her face. She narrowed her eyes, weighing the pros and cons. All right. Her voice was sweet and gentle. Without another word, she switched targets to Luo Gixing's group and shot off like a rocket. Prepare for battle. Yang Nyangsha shouted as he rushed forward, his body expanding and dark gold hair covering his body as he summoned his martial soul. A pair of purple soul rings rose from beneath Tang Wuling while blue silver grass followed Yang Nyangsha's wake. All the while Gu Yue remained situated at Tang Wuling's side. No sooner had they broken into a sprint, a green light shot out and enveloped Tang Wuling and Yang Nyangsha, boosting their speed. Yang Nyangsha glanced backward in shock. Wind element. It was now that he recalled Tang Wuling's words about Gu Yue's support. She used ice before, and now wind. Does she have twin martial souls? Even so, Yang Nyangsha's astonishment was short-lived. After all, he had never heard of anyone named Gu Yue on the genius youth ranking. Silver lights twinkled and rose from the feet of the 2 boys in battle. Suddenly, the shield-bearing youth accelerated and crashed into his opponents. Yet instead of sending them flying, the 2 boys seemed glued to the shield. Then with a wave of her staff, Shu Shaoan impaled the other boy with an ice spear. In a flash of light, both boys were eliminated. From beginning to end, only a few seconds had passed. In fact, Yang Nyangsha had drawn the other girl to his side at the same time Luo Gixing's group neutralized the 2 boys. Their battle efficiency was shocking. Through it all, Luo Gixing never stopped smiling. His 3 soul rings, 2 yellow and 1 purple, twinkled in turn. Without pause, the shield youth turned to charge at the girl coming from Tang Wuling's side. Silver light swallowed up the ground beneath her. This time, Tang Wuling could clearly see space warping around her, compressing her and locking her in place. Chapter 312, Hell Wusijuo, Luo Gixing's first soul skill, spatial lock. Using its powerful imprisonment ability, he had neutralized the 2 students earlier. The soul skill could not completely freeze the target and could only grip them in place for a moment, so it required precise judgment to be used effectively, something Luo Gixing did not lack. Judging by the charging girl's momentum, he ruled out breaking into a direct confrontation. But at that moment, everyone's eyes went wide. The girl's body became illusory and soul rings rose from beneath her. 1 ring, 2 rings, 3 rings, 4 rings. A total of 4 purple rings appeared around her. Wusijuo. Half of the students present shouted in unison, including Tang Wuling. They had just mentioned her and now she appeared. Then it struck Tang Wuling why Yang Nyangsha had only asked for her cooperation because he recognized her. Although Luo Gixing's team was larger than theirs and in good condition, it was difficult to say which team would come up at the top, especially with the rank 9 Hell Wusijuo and rank 27 Dark Bear Yang Nyangsha on their side. Even at the same soul level, the gap between soul masters could be as great as that of the heavens and the earth. It was a rare opportunity for them to eliminate Luo Gixing's large team as well as establish a relationship with Wusijuo. Yang Nyangsha's actions would benefit them immediately as well as in the long run. Wusijuo twisted in the air as if boneless, leaving an afterimage in a forward dash. An aura of darkness shrouded her now, but this darkness was different from that of Shu Yicheng's. She seemed more agile than before, an otherworldly air clinging to her form. Her figure flickered as she suddenly accelerated, appearing before Luo Gixing's team in a flash of lightning. This wasn't the first time most of Luo Gixing's team had worked together. The shield youth did not falter at Wishijo's mad dash, his 3 soul rings lighting up in an instant. With that, Wishijo abruptly changed direction, shifting her charge toward the shield wielding youth. The shield youth had activated his 1000-year soul skill, Pull. The skill allowed him to attract the attention of his enemies for 10 seconds. For defense-type soul masters, this was a soul skill with tremendous use. Not a single person in Shrek Academy could be considered ordinary. It only took an instant for him to draw Wishijo's charge toward him. A boom thundered through the air. Defense-type and control-type soul masters naturally restrained agility-type soul masters to a degree. But what happened was the entire opposite. Just before Wishijo and the shield youth collided, the youth's expression blackened, and a second later, he was sent flying backward. Wishijo's first soul ring dimmed while her second lit up. She continued her charge like a civet, countless after images of slashing claws tearing through Luo Gixing's team. She had single-handedly decimated the entire team. This was the strength of the greatest genius of the first grade, Wishijo. The 2 agility-type soul masters barely managed to brandish their blades in defense against the claws. However, they could do nothing in front of Wishijo's mighty cultivation base. The disparity between 4 and 3 rings became apparent now, and the 2 soul masters went reeling backward, blood spurting out of their mouths in scarlet arcs. Luo Gixing's flank was now exposed. All of a sudden, a whirlpool of silver light swirled around Wishijo, engulfing the rest of her shadow claws and dragging her body from midair into its belly. A grunt, and Wishijo's body flickered, becoming more illusory than before. She brought her hands together above her head, form bursting with a sharp sword's aura, and an enormous blade of pitch black light materialized in her hands, contrasting with milky skin. She swung the blade down ferociously at the silver vortex. In an explosion of black and silver, the vortex disintegrated, the blade of black light scattering into nothingness. Luo Gixing retreated 2 steps back, groaning. White light struck him and the 2 agility-type soul masters from the back, restoring their strength. The shield youth had also recovered by now and once again used his soul skill to draw Wishijo's attention in a charge. This was the strength of a team. Wishijo might possess explosive strength, but Luo Gixing had survived her fierce combo. Now it was time for his team's retaliation, and retaliate they did. A wheel of ice appeared above Wishijo's head, melting into a threads of blue light rendering her movements into a snail's pace. Xu Shaoan only had 2 soul rings, no doubt about it, but that did not mean her controllability was weak. Afraid of being left behind by her teammates, she had worked hard to improve in the last 3 years. Though usage of her Star Wheel Ice Staff was limited to nighttime, she had slowly mastered all of her Ice Staff's soul skills. Her impressive spiritual power helped her utilize them with maximum efficacy. Wishijo felt trapped in a quagmire under the effects of both the shield youths and Xu Shaoan's control skills. Wrapped in such a tough situation, she fought to steady her breath. In a moment's glance, a blue vine pulled her to the side. Despite not completely out of harm's way, she was outside of the shield youth's soul skills range. With a roar, the transformed Yang Nyangsha barreled past her. He smashed his fists into the ground. The earth shuddered, rocks peppering Luo Gixing's group. And then Wishijo was free. A giant icicle floated above Luo Gixing's team. Wishijo felt a tug on her waist again, and next thing she knew, she was whisked to the side. It felt warm, like being kept in someone's embrace. Turning her head, Wishijo found herself staring straight at a pretty face, mesmerized by large eyes framed with long eyelashes. It's him. As students of the same class, she recognized who he was. The blacksmith representative, Kang Wolin. I'll send you over. As he held her by the waist, his eyes never left the battlefield. He rotated his body halfway, strength poured into his muscles, and then he exploded. In an instant, Wishijo found herself soaring into the air. All in the blink of an eye, Kang Wolin wasted no time in activating his second soul ring. Underneath Luo Gixing's team bursted blue-silver impaling array while a hail of icicles fell from above. Chapter 313, Twin Soul Wishijo. Kang Wolin's team worked in perfect concert with Wishijo. While she soared into the air, Dark Bear Yang Nyangsha charged toward the shield youth like a tank, his soul rings twinkling and his dark golden hair shining radiantly. He soon entered the range of the shield youth's pull, but he wasn't trying to avoid it in the first place. At that moment, Luo Gixing demonstrated his astonishing battlefield controllability that made him the core of his team. Inches before Yang Nyangsha crashed into the shield youth, the youth disappeared in a silver flash of light and Yang Nyangsha charged through thin air. The 2 agility-type soul masters instantly appeared at Yang Nyangsha's sides, dashing around him and toward Kang Wolin and Gu Yue in the backline. It was clear that Yang Nyangsha's might easily suppress both agility and defense-type soul masters, so when the shield youth reappeared, he stood at Luo Gixing's side. Luo Gixing's eyes glinted as his first and second soul rings lit up. Silver light flashed around Yang Nyangsha. Spatial soul skills were powerful because no one could do anything to avoid being teleported. In the blink of an eye, Yang Nyangsha found himself 15 meters away from his previous position and rooted in place by spatial lock. This short-range teleportation and spatial lock would probably only slow him down by 2 or 3 seconds, but on a battlefield, victory or defeat could be decided in that time. With Yang Nyangsha teleported away, Kang Wolin and Gu Yue were left wide open for the 2 agility-type soul masters to swoop in. It only took them a second to close the distance. Meanwhile, the shield soul master thrust his shield into the air with a grunt. Soul power flooded out of him to form walls around him. Luo Gixing and Xu Shaoan. Their remaining 2 teammates stood behind them. One had his hands raised into the air, conjuring a giant bird of fire that soared into the air. The other was their support-type soul master. Light bloomed around him, flowing out to empower the soul power of his teammates. Soul power amplification was a powerful support ability that scaled with the user's growth. Its influence was tremendous and could turn the tide of battle, especially for a 7-man team. Luo Gixing's smile had already vanished from his face. An eerie calm set in him, his eyes shining with a light as if they were able to see through everything. The impromptu cooperation between Wishijo and Yang Nyangsha's team was undoubtedly the greatest challenge he had ever faced, but he was confident in his victory. He wasn't fighting them alone. He had a team with him. He firmly believed that the power of an individual person was limited, but that of a team was infinite. Furthermore, as the team's leader, it was crucial for him to have the skills that allowed his teammates to display their full potential. Luo Gixing had complete control of the battlefield. The firebird melted the incoming icicle hail and the shield youth trampled the blue-silver grass into oblivion. Yang Nyangsha had been teleported away since he was the most important foe on the battlefield. Although Wishijo was powerful, Luo Gixing was confident that his team would be able to defeat her. He currently needed to weaken his opponents and solidify his advantages, so his first priority was to get rid of the weakest 2-ringed enemy. After doing so, he would be able to consolidate his team's strength and focus it on eliminating Dark Bear Yang Nyangsha and Hell Wishijo. In a flash of blue light, blue-silver grass wound itself around Gu Yue's waist. Tang Wolin used the grass to pull Gu Yue into his arms and dropped to one knee, activating blue-silver impaling array to form a shield around them. The 2 agility-type soul masters charging toward Tang Wolin weren't fools. The instant the blue-silver grass erupted from the ground, they leapt into the air. However, the grass was too thick, and they soon lost track of their targets. Meanwhile, Yang Nyangsha broke free of the spatial restraints and charged at Luo Gixing with a roar. Wishijo, on the other hand, finally displayed the might of someone ranked in the top 10. Light exploded from Wishijo as she soared through the air. Her aura was completely different from what it had been just moments before. Her 4th soul ring lit up and she split into 3 clones, each of which dove in different directions. The clones were transparent, as if they were made of murky water. Then her 2nd soul ring lit up. Its radiance combined with the splendor of her 4th ring to illuminate the sky. Claws of shadow filled the sky, completely encompassing the firebird and the shield wall. She was meeting force with force. Even though speed was her forte, she chose to clash with them head-on. A continuous rumbling resounded throughout the forest as the claws struck the shield wall and the firebird. Luo Gixing's face darkened as he stared at Wishijo. He knew all too well just how much of an advantage Wishijo has because of her higher cultivation base. Her reputation wasn't just empty words. The shield youth and the soul master who summoned the firebird groaned as they fought the storm of claws. Though they trembled before Wishijo's might, they barely managed to hold on due to the soul power amplification from their support. A silver vortex appeared once more. Luo Gixing, with his 1000-year soul skill, was the only one who could contend with Wishijo. However, the instant the silver vortex appeared, Wishijo's 2nd and 4th soul rings went dim. Instead, her 1st soul ring shone. With a sudden burst of speed, she shot through the air and sped toward the support-type soul master like a laser. It was Hell Rush. This was Wu Sijuo's true aim. She didn't climb to rank 9 through brute force alone. No, she had been carefully planning her moves the entire battle. Yet at that moment, an ice spear shot at her from the side, intercepting her mid-rush. The spear gleamed with a cold light. Anyone hit by it would definitely be in for a bad time. Wu Sijuo had just used a succession of soul skills, so she clearly had to be running low on soul power. Luo Gixing turned around and gave Xu Shaoan a thumbs up. Although Xu Shaoan only had 2 soul rings, she always managed to act at crucial moments throughout the competition for class presidency, making her move at just the right time to change the tide of battle. She didn't need any direction from Luo Gixing to blend in and cooperate with her teammates. It could be said that she was the glue that kept the team in sync. As a result of this, they approved of her despite her low cultivation base. At that instant, however, something completely unexpected occurred. Wu Sijuo's mouth curved into a frightening smirk. She didn't move to dodge the ice spear. Instead, her 4 purple soul rings vanished and were replaced by a single purple soul ring. White light exploded from her body. White hair appeared all over her, and power surged through her flesh. Her single soul ring flared bright, and right before the ice spear struck her, she slapped it with a golden clawed hand, shattering it into a puff of frost. She then crashed into the support type soul master. Light flashed. He was eliminated. Twin martial souls. Luo Gixing blurted. The situation was just as he said. In that instant, Wu Sijuo's 4 soul rings were swapped with a single soul ring and her martial soul transformed. There was only one possible explanation for this. She had twin martial souls. Very few knew about this fact. Luo Gixing wasn't the only one shocked by this. Even her impromptu ally, Yang Nyangsha, was dumbstruck. Though she only had 1 soul ring for this martial soul, her cultivation base still reached at least rank 40, so her single soul skills might was equivalent with that of a 4th rings. Upon landing, Wu Sijuo didn't pause for even an instant. Shrouded in an aura of golden light, she charged at the soul master that summoned the firebird, barreling through the bird that barred her path. Just as the ranged type soul master was about to be crushed by Wu Sijuo, a silver flash teleported him off to the side. Although he had saved his ally, Luo Gixing's power wasn't limitless. Doing this meant that he had to turn his back to the battlefront against Yang Nyangsha. Chapter 314, Self-Soul Fusion Skill. Gritting his teeth, the shield soul master charged forward and attacked with his shield. Yang Nyangsha had suffered quite a bit after being helplessly teleported out of the fray by Luo Gixing. Now that he had finally rejoined the chaos, he couldn't bear to restrain his strength. A boom tore through the air as Yang Nyangsha smashed the shield out of the shield youth's hand and sent him flying backward. Before the youth could hit the ground, Tang Wuling sent a strand of blue silver brass shooting out from behind Yang Nyangsha to wind its way around the youth's waist. Then Tang Wuling yanked backward, flinging the young shield soul master right into Yang Nyangsha's fist. White light blossomed, signaling the youth's elimination. Yang Nyangsha turned around to face Tang Wuling and Gu Yue. To his surprise, he found no trace of the 2 agility type soul masters from Luo Gixing's side they should have been fighting with. They already got rid of those 2. Yang Nyangsha was shocked. Tang Wuling is just a 2-ringed control type soul master. Was he actually able to suppress those 2 agility types? But this is Shrek Academy. None of the people here are weak. Maybe Gu Yue's strength is the reason they won. However, his conjecture only went that far. They were just temporary allies after all. With the mysterious disappearance of his 2 agility type teammates in addition to the other 2 losses, Luo Gixing's face twisted into a frown. In spite of that, he didn't give up. He conjured up another silver vortex, but this time, it expanded from his body to repel instead of pull. Be it Wu Sijuo who rushed him from the rear or Yang Nyangsha charging at him from the front, both were repelled. Silver light exploded from Luo Gixing's body, engulfing Xu Shaoan and the Firebird Soul Master. We're leaving. He cried. At that instant, however, the silver light around him became chaotic, the spatial energy going out of control. This is bad. The power of space was mysterious and terrifying. Any other element becoming chaotic wouldn't be as dire. If a soul master lost control of any other element, they could simply run away, but escaping from chaotic space was easier said than done. The spatial energy that was supposed to teleport them away exploded, and a rift opened up in the sky. Wave after wave of terrifying energy lashed out at Yang Nyangsha and Wu Sijuo. Luo Gixing shouted defiantly, but in the next instant, the spatial rift swallowed him up. The Firebird Soul Master was swallowed along with him, and the chaotic space crushed and tore the 2 of them apart. A second later, all that remained of them were a few particles of light. In the limbo before awakening to reality, Luo Gixing racked his brain trying to understand how the space he always had perfect control of suddenly went into disarray at that moment. In reality, he had been careless. With both his soul and spiritual power exhausted, his control had slipped. In the aftermath of Luo Gixing's failure, a solitary figure landed on the ground. Without the slightest hesitation, she threw her arms high up in the air. I surrender. I surrender. I'll follow whoever wins. It was Xu Shaoan. Luo Gixing's team had collapsed in an instant, and she was the only survivor out of the original 7. Wu Sijuo's stern expression didn't waver. Yang Nyangsha, on the other hand, heaved a sigh as he relaxed. However, his gaze was glued to Wu Sijuo. If Tang Wuling's team didn't count Xu Shaoan, they outnumbered Wu Sijuo 3 to 1. Not only had she exhausted a lot of her strength in the battle against Luo Gixing's team, using 1,000-year soul skills one after another, she had also switched to her second martial soul and used its soul skill. Even for a 4-ring soul master, her soul power reserves would be nearly depleted. Now was the time for Tang Wuling's team to strike. If they could win against Wu Sijuo, then the position of class president was as good as theirs. Wu Sijuo narrowed her eyes at Yang Nyangsha. She stood there staunchly, golden light flashing around her body. We've got no time to lose. Yang Nyangsha shouted then charged at Wu Sijuo. Yang Nyangsha knew all too well that, if they let Wu Sijuo recover, not even the combined power of his entire team would be able to defeat her and her 4 purple soul rings. They either defeated her now or never. Even as he charged at Wu Sijuo, he did not forget about Xu Shaoan. We have more people, he cried. Join us. Yang Nyangsha had to take advantage of everyone he could. Even if his words only distracted Wu Sijuo for an instant, it would be worth it. Besides, Xu Shaoan was only a 2-ring soul master. He didn't really care if she joined them, but he failed to notice that, as he rushed forward, Tang Wuling and Gu Yue simply stood by. Okay. Xu Shaoan said, accepting his offer, but she didn't even raise her staff as he continued charging forward. Yang Nyangsha and Wu Sijuo collided, the air around them whipping into a frenzy. The Dusk Gold Bear was a formidable martial soul. Wu Sijuo's second martial soul was also an assault type, yet the clash had actually forced her a few steps backward. Her exhausted soul power left her at a disadvantage. Yang Nyangsha's confidence soared as he saw her fall back. The dark golden light around him shone more intensely as his 3rd soul ring lit up, and he grew to become 3 meters tall. He didn't hesitate at all when it came to attacking the girl, resolutely sending the brute force of his fist to smash Wu Sijuo. At that moment, Wu Sijuo accelerated, a black light streaking out of her body. She's switching martial souls? Yang Nyangsha rejoiced. He didn't fear her 4-ringed martial soul at all. From what he saw of her in the previous battle, he understood that her first martial soul was an agility type. Her cultivation base was higher than his, but she was depleted right now. Aside from strength, the Dusk Gold Bear also possessed a formidable defense. With his 3rd soul skill now activated, Yang Nyangsha was confident that Wu Sijuo wouldn't be able to break through his defenses. In addition to that, he had Tang Wuling and Gu Yue for backup. His victory was all but assured. Just as Yang Nyangsha began to revel in his impending victory, something strange started to occur to Wu Sijuo. A black aura appeared around her, but the golden light didn't disappear. Both auras fused into a chaotic radiance of dark gold as the golden hair on her body took on a crystalline luster. Her human form disappeared and she became a transparent white tiger. What's this? Yang Nyangsha stared at her with dull eyes. He had never heard of something like this happening before. There's no way this is a martial soul avatar. Even if her martial soul is the white tiger, she would need to be a 7-ring soul sage to manifest her avatar. She's just a 4-ring soul ancestor. The thought only crossed his mind for a split second before he had to snap back to attention as a hell white tiger swiped at him. Try as he might, there was nothing he could do to dodge it. An instant later, a white light flashed. Another contestant was eliminated. Tang Wuling and Gu Yue were dumbstruck. Is that a self-soul fusion skill? To execute a soul fusion skill, 2 highly compatible soul masters were needed. When they came into contact with each other, their martial souls would fuse and release an explosion of power. This reminded Tang Wuling and Gu Yue of their battle against the twin sisters that unleashed their soul fusion skill to instantly reverse the tide of battle. The power that Wu Sijuo currently displayed exceeded that of the twin sisters and was well beyond what Tang Wuling and Gu Yue could comprehend. In Tang Wuling's mind, there could only be a single reason for the strength she just exhibited. It had to be a self-soul fusion skill. Chapter 315, The Importance of Class President. Wu Sijuo's soul fusion was undoubtedly mighty. A single attack was all that was needed to disintegrate Yang Nyangsha and reduce him to motes of light. Run. Tang Wuling immediately ordered. Yu Yue moved without hesitation. Silver light flashed, teleporting Tang Wuling and herself just outside the clearing and into the depths of the forest. They had tasted defeat at the hands of a soul fusion skill before, not daring to underestimate it. They chose to exercise caution and retreat in the face of such power. The air stirred. A moment later, the hell white tiger appeared where they just stood, its powerful claws slashing out only to hit nothing. I surrender. Xu Shaoan shouted as she sat on the ground with her hands high in the air. The hell white tiger landed on the ground. In the next moment, however, its figure faded, turning illusory before twisting and disappeared, leaving Wu Sujuo in its place. Despite her pale complexion, she stood with her back straight and head held high. Her strength served as proof that she more than deserved her position as the strongest student of the first grade. With 4 purple soul rings, twin martial souls, and a self-soul fusion skill, it was impossible for her not to stand at the peak. Her most important ability was her soul fusion skill. It was unprecedented on the Douluo continent. All of her abilities combined to earn her a spot in the top 10 of the genius youth's ranking. Hey, are you okay? Xu Shaoan asked. Wu Sujuo turned around, shooting Xu Shaoan a cold look. I'm very weak right now. My body is in a bad condition, and I've overdrafted my soul power. If you plan to act, then do it now. Come on. Xu Shaoan waved her hand dismissively. How could I take advantage of you like that? I'm not that kind of person. I already surrendered, so I'm on your team now. Wu Sujuo frowned at Xu Shaoan's sweet and innocent smile, then sat down on the ground. Then protect me. I'm going to meditate. She closed her eyes. It was Xu Shaoan's turn to stare blankly at Wu Sujuo. Was my acting too good? Tang Wuling and Gu Yue watched from the shadows of a tree. Gu Yue knitted her brows. What are we going to do now? Tang Wuling smiled wryly. There's no hurry. Such a large battle definitely attracted the attention of others. With the competition nearing an end, who wouldn't take this opportunity to defeat Wu Sujuo? We'll wait here. Her soul fusion skill might be powerful, but it also consumes a lot of soul power. Right now, she's not a threat, so we'll just use her as bait. Besides, she probably has another card up her sleeve since she dares to meditate out in the open. Rather than taking a risk and going out to search for others, we should wait here and let Wu Sujuo weaken them before we jump in. Gu Yue shook her head. I'm okay with waiting, but I don't want anyone to disturb her. Tang Wuling stared at her in surprise. Why? Gu Yue met his gaze. I want to duel her at her best condition. Tang Wuling chuckled. Oh, you. You're just as stubborn as always. All right, fine. We'll protect her while she meditates then. You two sure have big hearts. Wouldn't it be better if I just deal with her right now? She popped up by their side. He had been quietly trailing them from a distance the entire time. Tang Wuling shook his head. No, Gu Yue is right. If we defeat her right now, would she really accept us as the victors? There's no way she would, and others wouldn't either. If any of us wants to become the class president, we'll need to show our strength. This is Shrek. Only the strong are welcomed. Wu Sujuo is a challenge we have to overcome. He turned to Gu Yue. But I want you to promise me one thing. Gu Yue, what? I know you refuse to accept this, but don't deny that a 4-ring soul master with a self-soul fusion skill is stronger than us. It will be difficult to defeat her, so let's fight together, all right. Gu Yue smiled. Our opponent isn't just her. Wuling, is class president really that important to you? Tang Wuling was taken aback. His heart thumped, but he smiled a moment later. I understand. Thanks for your reminder. We'll do this together. Captain, why are you excluding me from this? She pouted. Tang Wuling whispered a few words into Shishi's ear, and he mulled over them. That makes sense. Okay. I'm fine with that. Just remember to compensate me later. Shishi giggled mischievously. Tang Wuling rolled his eyes. Even without this matter, would I owe you anything? The forest gradually settled. Contrary to Tang Wuling's expectations, no one came. 12 people remain. The arena will be reduced now for the final battle. Shen Yu's voice resounded throughout the forest, and the world before them blurred. When everything came back into focus, Tang Wuling, Yu Yue, Xu Shaoan, and the meditating Wu Sujuo were beside each other. They had originally been deep within the forest, surrounded by giant trees and dense foliage. Now, however, the terrain was nothing like before. A clearing of at least 100 meters in diameter appeared in front of them. Not a tree in sight, and every inch of its ground covered in blue silver grass. It was as if they were on an elevated dueling arena. In this space were 12 people. Tang Wuling's group of 4, with the addition of Wu Sujuo, were grouped together. To their left was the group of 3 led by immortal Shu Yucheng, and on their right was a group of 4. This group of 4, however, were in dire straits. Blood soaked every one of them, and their soul power fluctuations barely noticeable. Tang Wuling finally understood why no one had come to eliminate Wu Sujuo. It turned out that there were only a dozen of them left, a third of which were barely clinging onto life and devoting all their energy into recovering. After taking everything in, Shu Yucheng was the first to act. He charged at the 4 injured soul masters like a bolt of lightning, his 2 followers darting out an instant later. They were clearly well rested and in peak condition. Rather than attacking the injured group though, the 2 followers moved to the side to guard Shu Yucheng from Tang Wuling's team. The first grade had a total of 101 students. Only 12 of them remained now. This was the eve of their final battle for presidency. Tang Wuling and his comrades remained still, simply watching Shu Yucheng charge. The team of 4 was trapped, an arrow at the end of its flight. The sides flashed down. They disappeared in flashes of light. Now only 8 remained. They were the 3 from Shu Yucheng's team, and the 5 on Tang Wuling's side. Tang Wuling took the lead, approaching his opponents. His gaze fixed on Shu Yucheng. Now that the competition had come to this point, scheming and waiting no longer had any purpose. Now was not the time for wisdom to shine, but for strength to show its supremacy. The only way to convince others was to show strength. Shu Yucheng turned to look at Tang Wuling, his expression grim as he lifted his demon scythe up. His 2 companions released their martial souls, but when they saw that Tang Wuling only had 2 soul rings, a mocking smile tied their lips. They assumed their usual battle formation, Gu Yue and Xu Shaoan in the rear, Tang Wuling as the vanguard, and Shishi on the side. Neither side spoke a word. They all knew that this was the final battle. Shu Yucheng didn't understand what the situation was with Wu Sujuo, who was seated off in the distance, but he knew that his only option now was to defeat his opponents. Save your soul power, Tang Wuling said to Gu Yue. I'll deal with Shu Yucheng. His words were filled with confidence. Since the start of the competition, Tang Wuling had been patiently biding his time. For the sake of his comrades, he didn't display his full strength and maintained himself in peak condition the entire time. It wasn't that he didn't want to fight and show off his power, but that he couldn't. He had to act in consideration of his team, but he no longer had to hold himself back. He wanted to see who was stronger, him or immortal Shu Yucheng. He wanted to see just how strong a rancor was. Previously, Gu Yue had asked him if being class president was important. The class president's seat was important. However, it just couldn't compare with the pleasure of battle. Shu Yucheng's 2 great teammates turned illusory and dashed out. These 2 were agility type soul masters. As for Shu Yucheng, he was undoubtedly an assault type. Chapter 316, the final battle. At the sight of the fire crackling within Tang Wuling's eyes, Gu Yue stopped right in her tracks. That confidence made her not want to interfere in his battle against Shu Yucheng. Taking on the 4-ring Shu Yucheng in a one-on-one match was exactly what Tang Wuling wanted to do. There was no doubt that out of the entire first grade, Shu Yucheng was second to only Wu Sujuo. His tactical prowess might not match Luo Gixing's, but his individual strength was far higher. Wu Zhangkong had always drilled into them that only by facing truly powerful opponents would they grow to their full potential. To Tang Wuling, Shu Yucheng was a towering challenge, but one he desperately yearned for. Gu Yue turned around, her eyes drifting to the seated Wu Sujuo. She sat down and closed her eyes. She wanted the both of them to duel in their best conditions. The instant Tang Wuling and Gu Yue resolved themselves, the scent of the battlefield changed. The 2 had chosen their opponents for the final battle. Defeat was of no consequence to them, so long as they could grow from combat. A faint golden aura spread around Shishi, and in a flash, a figure of the same bright color shot out of his body, dashing toward one of the grey opponents. Clearly, he would be fighting both of them by himself. Further off, Xu Shaoan brandished her staff high in the air, her mouth moving as she mumbled some chants. Yet she did not unleash a soul skill. Instead, she closed her eyes. The reasons for her actions anyone's guess. The grey youth on the left became more tangible as he summoned his martial soul, a pair of dark silver sai. Their sharp points were excellent for stabbing, and the prongs enabled them to catch any weapon. He crossed his sai together. The meeting of metal resulted in a burst of energy, which combined into a grey halo launching toward Shishi. He isn't an agility type, but a control type. Shishi instantly realized. The 2 were about to clash. Inches before collision, Shishi's figure flickered like a ghost, and he appeared outside of the halo's range. At the same time, he unleashed a light dragon blade that reached his opponent's neck in the blink of an eye. He had used the secret art of the Tang sect, Ghost Shadow Perplexing Track, to evade. On the other front of battle, Shishi's clones were similarly flickering all over the battlefield with Ghost Shadow Perplexing Track. There was nothing their opponent could do to stop their approach in face of such such an attack. Xi had engraved Elderkai's criticisms into his heart after the entrance exam. Using both of his third soul skills, he could produce 6 clones for 6 targets. However, he couldn't perfectly control all of them, his cultivation and spiritual power too lacking to do so. Her criticisms had forced him to wonder whether 6 clones of that caliber were anything special. After pondering this question, he experimented with his skills and discovered that his current limit was fully controlling 2 clones, especially if he chose to have both clones use Ghost Shadow Perplexing Track. By limiting himself to 2 clones, he could freely use the secret art by splitting his mind into 2 parts, which also benefited his spiritual power growth. This was his first attempt at putting his theories into practice. Xi had summoned 2 clones, splitting his mind in 2. He had ignored every other soul skill in his arsenal, choosing to focus on Light Dragon Blade instead, in order to bring out the true potential of Ghost Shadow Perplexing Track. Aiming for the best possible result was not on his list. Rather, avoiding mistakes was. He would use these 2 powerful opponents to temper himself. The pair of quick ray youths turned out to be control type soul masters. They had assumed that delaying an agility type soul master who used clones would be easy, but reality wasn't as forgiving. Not only did their opponent's speed surpass their expectations, he also possessed a bizarre footwork that was impossible to trace. It wasn't long until they were backed into a corner. Xu Yucheng stood his ground, watching Tang Wuling approach him. His pale face revealed nothing, no emotions of any sort. A deathly cold aura lingered around him as ripples of black air clung to his scythe. Blue silver grass gathered and danced in a frenzied swarm around Tang Wuling with each step he took. Tensed around his arm, gold light fixed its dazzling golden eyes on Xu Yucheng. After countless mutations, gold light looked nothing like it did originally. Its entire body was covered in glistening golden scales, a spark of intelligence dancing in its eyes. A mere 10 meters from Xu Yucheng, Tang Wuling burst into action. Blue silver grass pounced like snakes upon Xu Yucheng, striking from all directions. Strength swelled in Tang Wuling's legs as he accelerated, dashing toward his target. Narrowing his eyes, Xu Yucheng slashed with his scythe, sending a black wave at the incoming swarm of grass. As if alive, the grass zigzagged in the air, swooping toward the ground beneath the black wave. The wave soon reached Tang Wuling. Listening closely, a hum could be heard in the air. Tang Wuling didn't try to dodge. Instead, golden light flashed as his right hand turned into a claw, and he thrust it at the wave, tearing it to shreds. He leapt at Xu Yucheng. The blue silver grass broke into a frenzy, shooting out to shackle Xu Yucheng, courtesy of Tang Wuling's fine ability. Xu Yucheng finally made his move. He shot up like a bolt of lightning, his scythe painting a shadow in the sky as darkness trailed from his body. The grass reaching for the heavens were cut down one after another. Then, the darkness receded and shot toward Tang Wuling. He was pressured from all sides. Tang Wuling was fully aware of his fate should he receive a direct attack from the powerful demon scythe. However, retreat was not an option. After observing Xu Yucheng's previous battle, he understood that his adversary's battle style centered on suppressing his opponents with brute force and cutting off all routes of escape. So, Tang Wuling could not retreat. His only choice was to advance. With a grunt, his 2 purple soul rings dimmed for the appearance of a golden one. A dragon's roar pierced the forest, resplendent golden light flooding out of his body. His claw and scales bled a brilliant gold, even seeming to empower gold light. Tang Wuling used golden dragon body. He swung both his arms out, the full power of his blood essence erupting. In that instant, a bright aura clung to his form and he shined like a miniature sun, his radiance blinding. The black light distorted when it came in contact with the gold, deflected to the side at Tang Wuling's command. It was another Tang-sect secret art, controlling crane, capturing dragon. In a flash, purple light blossomed in his eyes. The darkness swathed Xu Yucheng in mid-air and his movements turned sluggish. His third soul ring went dark, his soul skill interrupted. A strand of blue silver grass under Tang Wuling bled gold. It coiled like a spring, then ejected Tang Wuling into the air. He pierced through the darkness like an arrow of light. Blades of darkness sliced him as he flew through the air, planting several wounds and gashes over his body, but they were all superficial in the face of golden dragon body. Not a second later, Tang Wuling reached Xu Yucheng. Chapter 317. 1,000 stones breaks the scythe. Xu Yucheng's demon scythe definitely had a long reach. In order to keep him from taking advantage of that, Tang Wuling threw his clawed fist straight at him. Xu Yucheng, now recovered from the purple demonizer's spiritual attack, stared at Tang Wuling straight in the eye. He loosened his grip on his scythe and slid his hand up toward the blade's curved edge. Then, his expression as impassive as ever, slashed at the incoming claw with his shortened scythe. A crisp note rang through the air, and violet darkness ran up Tang Wuling's scaled arm. Xu Yucheng borrowed the force of their clash to jump backward. However, he staggered a few times as he retreated. Clearly, he had underestimated Tang Wuling's strength. Now that Xu Yucheng opened up some distance between them, it would be difficult for Tang Wuling to penetrate the range of the demon scythe again. He was disadvantaged in both reach and soul power. It was too late to use bind. Xu Yucheng would simply shred all the blue silver grass Tang Wuling threw at him. Xu Yucheng was stunned by Tang Wuling's strength. Although Tang Wuling revealed a shocking golden ring, he only had 2 soul rings and the soul power to match. It was on this basis that Xu Yucheng was confident he could overwhelm Tang Wuling in a contest of power. Even when he was forced to retreat, he still felt confident he could defeat Tang Wuling. Now, however, he realized that Tang Wuling's strength was beyond his expectations. Despite the disparity in their soul power, their clash had resulted in his complete and utter loss. Uncontrollable tremor still gripped him from the impact. He probably thinks I specialize in long weapons. Unfortunately for him, my demon scythe is just as good for close quarters fights. I can use it like a short weapon instead. He might be able to unleash explosive strength, but there's no way he can keep it up for long. Xu Yucheng's judgment was accurate, but he didn't know just how differently Tang Wuling viewed the situation. Trying to open up distance, blue silver grass shot out to hinder his opponent while Tang Wuling brandished his claw once more. Golden dragon body blood essence surged out, instantly dispersing the black haze surrounding his right arm. Then he lifted his arm up, the brilliant gold luster of his claw darkening as he slashed down. 5 dark gold waves of light shot out. A magnificent scene unraveled before the spectators, demanding their full attention. Even Wisujuo opened her eyes in awe. They watched Tang Wuling lift his arm, then slash down and release those 5 waves of light. The waves soared through the sky, rapidly closing in on Xu Yucheng. Apprehension dawned on Xu Yucheng's face, but it came too late. He only managed to turn around and hold his scythe in front before the attack reached him. The deafening screech of metal tearing metal resounded, and Xu Yucheng was sent crashing into the ground. He coughed up some blood, his complexion paler than usual. Despite his condition, his scythe only had a few cracks in it. He truly was worthy of being a ranker. The lower half of his body was buried in the ground, as if he was a nail waiting to be hammered. Tang Wuling descended upon him, his claw held high in preparation to attack him. Xu Yucheng could only feebly raise his scythe in defense. Metallic shrieks pierced the air every time Tang Wuling's claw clashed with the scythe. Although his attacks weren't fast, each one carried tremendous power. Xu Yucheng sunk deeper into the ground with every strike, and the cracks in his side spread like a web. Blood began to trickle out of his mouth and nose, then his ears and eyes. All 7 apertures of the head had blood streaming out of them, the flow only increasing with each blow. When the 5th strike landed, Xu Yucheng coughed out a spray of blood and his scythe shattered. A moment later, he disappeared in a flash of white light. Everyone watching gaped. That was the immortal. He had just defeated immortal Xu Yucheng, ranked 19 on the Genius Youth's ranking. Even if he consumed a lot of soul power to defend against Tang Wuling's attacks, he was still a 4-ring soul ancestor. He was one of the only 2 soul ancestors in the 1st grade. He was defeated. Just like that, when Tang Wuling defeated Xu Yucheng, Xi unleashed his full might as well. Xu Yucheng's 2 teammates were stunned by his defeat. Xu Shaoan took advantage of this, finally making her move. She shot an ice spear toward a youth on the left, piercing through the air like a bolt of lightning. Just as the 2 youths noticed the incoming ice spear, a violet light flashed at the eyes of the one on the right. Xu Shaoan was undoubtedly a master at exploiting any momentary openings her opponents revealed. Since her martial soul strength couldn't compare with that of her companions, so she had focused her efforts in this direction. The trajectory of the ice spear put the youth in a tight spot. If he wanted to dodge it, he would fall right into Xishi's hands. She activated Light Dragon Storm while releasing Light Dragon Blades, his appearance like a radiant whirlwind of death as he headed towards the two grey youths. Between the pincer attack and the shock from Shu Yucheng's defeat, there was no suspense in his fate. White light sparkled, signaling his demise. As for the remaining youth, the purple demon eyes stunned him. One of Shishi's clone promptly sliced his neck. It was only because of Shishi's preserved strength and deepened understanding of his third soul skill that he could corner the two with such ease. Shu Yucheng was not well versed in the art of scheming. He'd relied on sheer brute force to charge through every battle thus far. This resulted in his two teammates being exhausted and ripe for the picking. Tang Wulin's golden aura faded as he dispelled Golden Dragon body, revealing a somewhat pale complexion. His battle with Shu Yucheng may have been short, but he didn't hold anything back from the very beginning and even brought out one of his trump cards. Shu Yucheng had been shocked to death at the end. Tang Wulin hadn't forgotten Yang Nianxi's evaluation that Shu Yucheng's body was too frail to contain a 1,000-year soul ring. His plan was simple: overpower Shu Yucheng from the very start. In the face of absolute strength, it didn't matter even if Shu Yucheng's soul power was stronger. Tang Wulin just pounded Shu Yucheng until his body couldn't hold out anymore. It was thanks to Golden Dragon body that he could pull off such a daring plan. Without this skill and the physical enhancements it brought on his body, it would have been impossible for him to suppress Shu Yucheng so thoroughly. Tang Wulin panted heavily, but a radiant smile blossomed on his lips all the same as he regrouped with his teammates. Oddly enough, She stood there without the slightest hint of a victor's excitement. Rather, he wore a pensive expression. Tang Wulin took care not to disturb him. It was clear he was in the middle of some kind of enlightenment. Wei Sujoy was still seated, but a fire blazed in her eyes as she looked at Tang Wulin. She had always assumed that Tang Wulin was Yang Nianxi's underling even though all his soul rings were purple. He only had two, after all. When he had saved her in their battle against Luo Gixing, it left a deep impression on her. Yet now, he was burned into her memories. She finally understood what it meant to disguise oneself as a pig to devour a tiger. This guy is so good at hiding himself. I'm not sure about others, but the strength he displayed in his battle against Shu Yucheng is no less than Yang Nianxi's. Captain, Xu Shaowen called out with a smile. Yu Yue stood up and returned to his side. For Wei Sujoy to make it in the top 10 of the genius youth's ranking, there was no need to doubt her intelligence. She instantly connected the dots and understood the relationship between the four. So that girl from Luo Gixing's team was his comrade all along. Come. Wei Sujoy shot to her feet, a cold glint in her eyes. She wasn't resigned to defeat. 1 versus 4. So what? Tang Wulin turned to Gu Yue. He stared deep into her eyes. The fire burning in their depths told him everything he needed to know. He pulled on Xu Shaowen's sleeve. We're just going to observe. Huh? She looked at him in astonishment. Tang Wulin responded with a reassuring smile, believing Gu Yue. Okay. Xu Shaowen immediately agreed. Big sis Gu Yue, good luck. Amen. Gu Yue nodded, then took 3 steps forward. She regarded Wei Sujoy with a calm gaze, her demeanor as serene as a still lake. Chapter 318, 1 versus 1. 1 versus 1. Wei Sujoy stared at Gu Yue in astonishment. She really wants to duel me one-on-one? Why is she so confident? Isn't she just a support type? One-on-one. Gu Yue nodded. All right, Wei Sujoy coldly answered. 4 soul rings rose from her feet. She lightly tapped to the ground, then her figure became illusory as she dashed straight for Gu Yue. She reached Gu Yue in an instant, black light flashing as she extended her claws and swiped down. Tang Wulin stood away from the battlefield, watching attentively. During their brief alliance, he hadn't gotten a sense of Wei Sujoy's abilities. Now that she released the brunt of her power onto Gu Yue though, he could see just how oppressive her speed and power were. Despite Wei Sujoy's speed, her attack failed. A split second before the claws could tear Gu Yue apart, silver light burst out, and she disappeared. Wei Sujoy's claws flashed through nothing but air. Gu Yue reappeared 10 meters away, her expression as tranquil as ever. 3 soul rings, 2 yellow and 1 purple, revolved around her. They began to glow, then shine brilliantly as her hands moved in the air like fluttering butterflies, teasing the natural elements of the world to do her bidding. With 4 soul rings, Wei Sujoy's elemental perception was keener than most soul masters. She sensed that Gu Yue's entire being was turning into a whirlpool that crazily sucked in the surrounded elemental energy. She even felt a slight tugging on her own soul power. This is... With a snap of Gu Yue's fingers, an icicle coalesced and shot toward Wei Sujoy. This icicle, however, was completely different from a normal icicle. It was tricolored icicle with a blue tip, silver body, and a fiery red base. The red section exploded when it shot out, accelerating the icicle missile to unbelievable speeds and was in front of Wei Sujoy before she could even blink. Even so, Wei Sujoy displayed the power of an assault-type soul master by instantly slashing the icicle with her claw. The icicle exploded into millions of shards, and the air temperature around Wei Sujoy rapidly plummeted. Then, the air around her seemed to distort, tightening around her and hindering her movements. Is that a 3-element icicle? An icicle with the fire element included? Wei Sujoy may be shocked, but Gu Yue was only getting started. Gu Yue summoned another icicle, identical to the last. Like before, it shot forward with lightning speed. It was several times faster than an ordinary icicle due to the explosive power of the fire element, leaving its target no time to react at all. Wei Sujoy managed to slice it apart once more, but that only strengthened the space element constricting her. Although the restraining effect wasn't as powerful as Luo Gixing's spatial lock, it was enough to slow her down. A cold light flashed in Wei Sujoy's eyes. Her 4th soul ring lit up and she split into 2 clones, each heading towards Gu Yue from different angles. Gu Yue began spinning in place. The air stirred. Wind picked up, circling around Gu Yue. More and more strands of wind joined in until a green tornado surrounded her, howling as it quickly grew in size. Soon, Gu Yue was no longer visible. The winds roared their fury as Gu Yue emerged for a moment. White started to drift down from the sky. It increasingly fell faster as she called down more snow. Then she disappeared into the resulting snowstorm. The tornado sucked in the snow, quickly merging to become a blizzard. Wei Sujoy stiffened when she came into contact with the extreme cold, but still courageously rushed in to find Gu Yue. Her instincts told her that the longer she stayed in this blizzard, the worse her position would be. Her martial soul is too strange. How many elements does this make now? Yet just when she found Gu Yue and prepared to strike, a wall of earth burst from the ground and blocked her path. Wei Sujoy ferociously attacked the wall, breaking it and sending stones flying. However, Gu Yue was nowhere to be found. The blizzard tornado immediately absorbed the stone fragments as well, becoming a storm of ice and stones. The chaos surrounding Wei Sujoy completely cut off her vision, enveloping her in a whirlwind of death. Tang Wulin stood protectively in front of Shi. He was wary of the aftermath of the tornado, alert for the first signs of danger. Gu Yue had improved her control and could effortlessly wield 3 elements at once. In fact, she could even exploit her opponent's attacks to hasten the fusion of the elements and economize on her soul power. The tornado alone did not possess much destructive power. It was the fusion of multiple elements that made it dangerous. In the eye of the storm, Wei Sujoy could neither see anything around her nor sense Gu Yue's location. Wei Sujoy's first soul ring lit up as she decisively chose a direction and charged. I need to get out of this tornado first. Something this big can't last very long. Hell Rush was her first soul skill. It momentarily doubled her speed while condensing her soul power into an explosive attack in front of her. It was perfect for breaking out of a siege. Furthermore, all of her soul rings were powerful purple ones. Relying on her soul power to protect her body, she braved the assault of the biting cold winds and dashed 50 meters out with Hell Rush. Her vision cleared and the air pressure around her normalized. A smile graced her lips. I made it out. Suddenly, the hairs on the back of her neck stood on end. Light twisted around her and the next thing she knew, she was back in the eye of the storm, the pressure stronger than before. It was as if the storm's eyewall was trying to rip her apart. Tang Wulin stood right in front of where Wei Sujoy had broken out of the tornado, so he clearly saw what happened. Wei Sujoy really had succeeded in rushing out. A second later, however, Gu Yue had teleported behind her and then teleported the both of them away. Tang Wulin chuckled. There was no need to doubt Gu Yue's strength. After all, her martial soul gave her control over 6 elements. Her only weakness was her lack of explosive attack power. Although she could unleash powerful elemental fusion attacks, those required time to prepare. The best strategy to use against Gu Yue is to rush her and instantly decide the battle so that she doesn't have time to prepare any large-scale attacks. The longer the battle is drawn out, the stronger Gu Yue's position is. With her elemental tide and elemental fusion soul skills, as well as her ability to call upon the elemental energy found in the world itself, create a truly terrifying combination. Wei Sujoy's mistake is not knowing the extent of Gu Yue's abilities. If she had known beforehand, she could have immediately used her Hell White Tiger transformation to clinch victory. Not even Gu Yue's teleportation could escape the Hell White Tiger's might. But it's too late. Perhaps Wu Sijuo can put up more of a fight if she transforms into that hell white tiger, but Gu Yue has complete control over the battlefield now. Besides, Wu Sijuo's hell white tiger consumes too much soul power to be effective here. Now it's a battle of attrition. The outcome of the battle is pretty obvious. In reality, Tang Wulin's conjectures were slightly off. Wu Sijuo simply could not use hell white tiger again right now. Hell white tiger was her powerful self-soul fusion skill. However, the laws of the world were fair. Such a powerful ability naturally came with harsh restrictions. Just like how the power of Shu Yucheng's demon side was balanced by the corrosion of his body, Wu Sijuo needed 3 days of rest before she could use hell white tiger again. It was impossible for her to use it again right now. Chapter 319, The Victor. Wu Sijuo had thought her soul power recovered enough to defeat Gu Yue, but evidently, that was not the case. In a flash of white light, Wu Sijuo switched martial souls. White hair sprang up into existence and covered her body in a blanket of fur, a golden aura swallowing up her form. Her muscles expanded, the sinewed shape of her limbs impressive to eye. Instead of breaking out into a dash, she used her body's newfound strength to gradually pull free from the tornado. However, she soon found herself obstructed by earth walls. The walls hardly put up a fight, crumbling to find us with a single punch. But in the time it took her to shatter one, the tornado would have snuck up to obscure her vision. She couldn't maintain a straight path as she tried to escape. Fleeing from these obstacles clutches was just out of her reach. Wu Sijuo's expression turned sour. Although she was an agility-type soulmaster first and foremost, she favored direct confrontations. Winning her battles through brute force brought her all sorts of satisfaction. It pained her to endure such a muddled battlefield where she couldn't even locate her opponent. She was confident that if she could use hell white tiger, she could break free. Out of caution for that skill, Gu Yue must have maintained a large distance between them. That said, Wu Sijuo held complete faith in her fusion soul skill. Just a few seconds of it and she'd instantly get the upper hand. But as the seconds ticked by, the wind grew more turbulent, thrashing and tearing through the surroundings. The storm swelled in its excitement. All the while, Gu Yue funneled external elemental energy into the storm using elemental tide, building upon its power. A silver flash, and Gu Yue appeared at Tang Wulin's side, face dusted with color. Let's run. I can't control it any longer. There was a limit to how much elemental energy she could manage with elemental tide, and if left unchecked, it would rampage and explode. Since her opponent was Wu Sijuo, she didn't dare hold back. Now, the result was an unstable elemental storm on the verge of erupting. There was no need to consider Wu Sijuo anymore. Gu Yue's elemental tide condensed the elemental energy to a level far beyond both her control and soul rings. Wu Sijuo's tragic fate was sealed. The 4 teammates turned tail and bolted. Though pale, Gu Yue managed a satisfied smile. She had succeeded. The battle may not have gone as she had initially intended, and Wu Sijuo may not have been at her peak, but she still won. In a one-on-one battle, she stood the victor. Through their escape, the world bent and distorted. A beam of light shined down on them, warping and rippling as the wave-like particles hit skin. A moment later, they found themselves in darkness and utterly stupefied. After a while, they recovered their grip on reality. The doors to their cabins slid open and the 4 stepped out into the initial wide room. The emergence of Tang Wulin's team had brought out a wave of silence. Nearly 100 pairs of eyes surveyed the new arrivers. Several of those gazes dripped with complex emotions, unreadable. One of them belonged to the stoic Yang Nyangsha. His brows were knitted as he studied Tang Wulin. After being eliminated, he watched the rest of the competition through the viewing screens. All sorts of emotions warred within his heart, melding together into a puzzling mess. All he could manage at present was a bitter smile. Of the 5 geniuses of the first grade, Luo Gixing seemed the least touched by excitement. He sat in a corner of the room, knees held close to his chest and eyes staring off into nothingness. Though it was evident his mind roamed far away in thought, Tang Wulin's feats caused Jade Snake Senyuan to regard him in a newfound light. Although her attention mostly remained on him, occasionally a scornful glare or two flickered over to Gu Yue. On the other hand, Shu Yucheng was just as pale as usual. He fought hard to suppress the twitching in his hands. The stare he threw over at Tang Wulin cold enough to freeze. Losing to Tang Wulin had been disgraceful, no matter what a monstrous variant his opponent's martial soul was. In the end he was still a 2-ring soul grandmaster. As a soul ancestor, Shu Yucheng had no excuse for losing. Last but surely not least was Wu Sijuo. Her face was twisted into a rage, an ugly flash painting her cheeks and the sides of her neck. She had exited the cabin before Tang Wulin's team and stared daggers at Gu Yue as she walked past. Teeth gritted so hard it was a wonder they didn't crack. Everyone's eyes were on the 4, though it was safe to say they concentrated on Tang Wulin and Gu Yue especially. It was of no consequence what sort of devious strategies and tactics they had drawn up. What mattered most was that they had defeated immortal Shu Yucheng and Hell Wu Sijuo in one-on-one combat. The 2 were both 4-ring soul masters widely accepted as the strongest in their grade, but Tang Wulin and Gu Yue had 2 and 3 rings respectively. The difference in strength between the 4 of you is clear, so there was no need for the competition to continue any longer, said Shen Yi who was standing next to Wu Zhangkong. Tang Wulin and Gu Yue, you 2 are on the same team, so choose who will be the class president and the vice presidents. Unlike Tang Wulin, Gu Yue immediately took a step back, a clear sign of her opinion. Tang Wulin turned to look at her, only to be met with a sweet smile. He didn't bother trying to decline modestly. Sometimes, one just had to accept the responsibility. Shen Yi nodded, then directed her attention to Shi and Xu Xiaoan. Normally, we only take into consideration who's left standing at the end. Although you 2 showed remarkable power, it isn't enough. You both survived, so you have 2 choices. Insist on your candidacy for vice president, or step back. Let me remind you that there's a reselection for class representatives once every term, and strength will always be the decider. I'll give up, Xu Xiaoan instantly said. She had a clear understanding of her abilities. To further drive in her resignation, she walked into the crowd to join the spectators, finding her position at Luo Gixing's side. The corner of Shishi's mouth twitched as he watched her leave. That girl's acting is the real deal. I give up too. Although he hesitated for a moment, Shishi resolved himself. But I'm sure that I'll one day be able to be a challenger for president or vice president. An eerie calm settled upon him, his demeanor unlike his normal jittery one. On the battlefield, he had gained a deeper comprehension of his position. Each time an opponent stronger than him appeared, it stimulated him to improve faster. Shen Yi regarded them calmly. So you both choose the second option. Since the 2 of you lasted until the end and chose to give up on being the vice presidents, you will be rewarded with 2,000 contribution points to distribute among you 2. As for filling the remaining vice president seat, Wu Sijuo, would you like to take the position? Wu Sijuo glanced at Gu Yue, then Tang Wulin. She drew a deep breath. I'll do it. Shen Yi smiled. Good. Then everything is settled. The class president is Tang Wulin, and the 2 vice presidents are Gu Yue and Wu Sijuo. This was the best scenario she could have hoped for. While Shishi was by no means weak, he couldn't compare with Wu Sijuo. If not a single one of the 5 genius rankers held a position as a class representative, the entire class would be stricken with restlessness. With Wu Sijuo, the strongest of the rankers, as a vice president, the rest would be too intimidated to throw a big fuss. At the very least, discontent would be curbed. We'll hold competitions for the remaining 3 representative positions accordingly. The blacksmith's representative is already settled, with Tang Wulin being both class president and the blacksmith representative, so this leaves the mecha designers, makers, and mechanics. Now, would all designers, makers, and mechanics ranked 2 and above come sign up to compete? Tang Wulin listened, his body language the picture of tranquility. He occupied 2 of the 7 representative positions. He had a firm standing in the class now. Besides that, he obtained a deeper understanding of his classmates thanks to the battle for presidency. Gu Yue left his side and walked over to sign up. She's trying to be the designer representative. Not a beat later, Wu Sijuo, Luo Gixing, and Shu Yucheng also went to register. As members of the genius youth ranking, they were both strong and skilled in their professions. Only Yang Nyangsha remained still as he directed an awkward smile at Tang Wulin. Junior brother, you really know how to act low-key. Tang Wulin smiled. I was just lucky. If Shu Yucheng hadn't been so exhausted, I don't think I could have one. Yang Nyangsha shook his head. You can't be so sure about that. Anyone who isn't signing up for the profession competitions can leave now. Class is over. Meet back here for class tomorrow, Shen Yi announced. A chuckle escaped Yang Nyangsha's lips. Let's go then. Oh great class president, take good care of me in the future. Tang Wulin smiled wryly. Let's look after each other. Tang Wulin understood how important it was to obtain the approval of his classmates as class president, but it was a gradual process, one more in tune with coaxing than force. He would take things slowly for now. Chapter 320, The Class Representatives. While the rest of the class filtered out of the room, Tang Wulin's eyes glimmered with doubt as they settled upon Wu Zhangkong, who had been silent throughout the assembly. However, Wu Zhangkong did not so much as twitch his fingers. What's going on? Teacher Wu, you haven't taught us once since we got here. It didn't make any sense to Tang Wulin, but he swallowed it up anyway, leaving quietly with Shishi and Xu Xiaoan. After stepping foot into the hall, She broke into an immediate dash for his dorm. He was eager to reflect upon what he had learned today. On the verge of making a breakthrough, Xu Shaowen was the picture of uncertainty. Captain, do you think I can thrive at Shrek? Everyone's so amazing here. Although she had lasted to the end of the competition, it was due in large part to her cleverness. She had hidden herself in Luo Gixing's team, then later reunited with her true teammates. It was only under their wing that she had lasted so long. As such, she understood well just how weak she was, especially during the day. Tang Wuling responded with a reassuring smile. Don't underestimate yourself. You know, when my martial soul first awakened, it was just blue silver grass, but I never gave up and moved forward step by step. And now, I've come all this way. You can do the same. Besides, your martial soul is an amazing variant. I'm confident once your soul rank is higher, you'll be able to show off its true power. With your battlefield awareness and an improved martial soul, who knows how brightly you can shine. Xu Shaowen glowed. Yeah, you're right. I have to do my best and become stronger. Tang Wuling couldn't help but laugh. It's good to see you don't lose confidence in yourself that easily. Her previously troubled expression was nowhere to be found. If her second profession was being an actor, then she'd be the class representative for that, no doubt. When they arrived at their dorm room, they found Xu already meditating. Tang Wuling joined him without skipping a beat. Lunch was approaching, but he couldn't let even a second go to waste. By lunchtime, the class representatives for the first grade were settled. Who became the designer representative, holding two positions like Tang Wuling. He found out later from Yang Nyangsha that she was a fourth-rank designer. She had never bothered to tell him. Numerous people chose to walk the path of a mecha designer, yet she had managed to beat everyone else in their class. It was clear how skilled she was. The maker seat went to Luo Gixing, who was at the peak of the third rank. That wasn't to say he had no competition. Xu Yicheng fought fiercely with him for that position, to the point where Luo Gixing had almost lost. Despite what her beauty suggested, Wu Sijue was actually a skilled mechanic. She took the crown of mechanic representative. Mechanics weren't to be looked down upon. They had to be well-versed in both the design and making process. It was practically a hybrid profession. Although a mechanic would never reach the pinnacle in both fields, they had to know enough to synthesize the two sides to repair damaged mechas. At the 6th rank, mecha mechanics would be skilled enough to repair battle armors. They were talents that took a long time to blossom. Moreover, because fewer people chose to become mechanics, skilled mechanics were in higher demand than skilled designers or makers. The number of people who chose this path was only a step above of blacksmiths. The amount of knowledge required scared most hopefuls away. Although all 7 representative positions were occupied, there were only 4 representatives: class president and forging representative Tang Wuling, vice president and designer representative Bu Yue, vice president and mechanic representative Wu Sijuo, and lastly, maker representative Luo Gixing. By chance, Tang Wuling had overheard during lunch the situation was similar in the other grades. Those who had managed to become the president or vice president were usually superb in their professions, and more often than not, held multiple positions up there, had even been a genius who was the designer, maker, and mechanic representative, as well as vice president. They eventually entered the inner court, so now only the academy knew the height of their abilities. With this matter settled, classes went into full swing. Tang Wuling forwent stepping foot into the Blacksmiths Association in the afternoon. He didn't lack in contribution points for now, and he had more than enough to feed himself. His current priority was to improve his cultivation and obtain his third soul ring, and once he accomplished this, he would attempt to spirit refine once more. Improving his soul rank was crucial due to the imbalance between his soul rank and blacksmith rank. There were no shortcuts to increasing one's soul power. All he could do was ceaselessly cultivate and slowly grow. Xu Shaowen followed his lead and jumped into meditation. She was a step away from reaching rank 30 and obtaining her third soul ring. She trembled with excitement thinking of what new soul skill she would get her hands on, not to mention her second spirit soul. However, as they meditated in peace, an uninvited guest appeared at a different corner of the working student dormitory. So I'm gonna live here from now on. Yue's Hangyu plopped down onto the bed opposite of Yuanen's. Almost immediately, Yuanen scowled. This is my room. Get out. Yue's Hangyu sneered. Yours. This is the academy's, not yours. The academy assigned you to this room, so we're roommates now. We're both second grade students, you know. Or are you afraid I'll discover your secret? No. I just really hate you. Yuanen bit out. Yue's Hangyu had just joined the second grade and had already been kicking up a fuss all day in class. If not for his lack of experience, he probably would have challenged the class president for their position. Unfortunately for him, the second grade's class president was none other than Yuanen, a highly respected working student. Yuanen rose and made for the door. Where are you going? I'm going to request a room change. Yuanen responded with ice in his voice. I feel sick at the thought of sharing a room with you. You're a bad influence on my cultivation. You. If you think you're so good, then spar with me. But Yuanen left the room without saying another word. Yue's Hangyu let out a silent scream. I still glued to the shut door. That guy. He had to suppress his desire to battle with Yuanen. Despite his goading, Yuanen refused his sparring requests every single time. He had thought a public provocation in front of the whole class would do the trick, but not once did the cool class president persona let out a crack. Just how thick is his skin? But the reality was that Yuanen's status far surpassed Yue's Hangyu's imagination. Every one of their classmates had looked at him with disdain as he tried to provoke Yuanen. No one thought him a worthy opponent for their class president. Afterward, he was reduced to the status of a pariah. That wouldn't discourage him though. One of the reasons why he had wanted to be a working student was to find the fallen angel girl. But after asking around, it became clear to him there was no red-haired girl among the working students. With no other paths to explore, he could only go report his findings to the academy. Yet what he was told was still the same as the first encounter. They told him the academy would handle it, and as a student, his job was to study instead of chasing fruitless endeavors. There was a silver lining to all this, though. Yue's Hangyu had always been taken with the legends of the working students. Now that he was a working student himself, he was even more curious. Even though entering the inner court was a given for him, he wanted to know more about the types of people waving the working students banner. Now, he would be able to see for himself. As for becoming Yuanen's roommate, that was truly out of his hands and of the academy's doing. They were both second grade students after all. Thanks so much for watching this video. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Also leave a comment down below with suggestions on what novels to read.